about 6 years ago, we were having it was like a series kind of like this, where we were talking about, being hope, not just talking about hope, or sometimes we just talk about love, we talk about hope, and it's like, well, what are we actually going to do with that? And it was one of those kinds of series, and out in the plaza, there was an organization called Compassion, and Compassion's really big on child sponsorships, and so they had child sponsorship packets, and I didn't know this, but my wife decided to sponsor a child. Maybe because in that season of life, I would have said like, no, or would have said something like, well, how much? Nothing stemming from like a heart of compassion, nothing stemming from a place of like love. And that's because about 6 years ago, I was kind of like one of those religious people where you would do a bunch of things for God and you would talk about God and you would serve other people in the name of God or whatever, but on the inside, I was empty. I was apathetic. I could care less. In fact, I even remember having a meeting out in the plaza with someone, and it might have been you, who knows. And I was in that meeting, and that person was talking about some really a lot of stuff that's going on, and deep down inside, I could care less. I was just waiting to finish and say like, okay, I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to leave, because I just want to go home. And I did. And then I went home, and I'm like, dude, something is wrong. That's not good. Like, I feel like if you want to be a pastor, like one of the criteria is like, you should love God and care for people. And number 2 was not happening. And I had an issue there. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. I was doing all this stuff. I was spending so much time doing stuff for God. What I realized is that I wasn't taking time to be with God. There's a big difference there. And Jesus talks about this issue to a group of people on a grassy hill. He talks about this issue because in that time, there were people like me. There were religious people that were acting holy, they were acting spiritual on the outside, but on the inside, they were empty. Or as Jesus would say, they're like whitewashed tombs, which is a fancy way of saying you are dead inside. Ooh. Look at what he says here to a group of people on a grassy hill about addressing that issue. He says, and when you come before God, don't turn that into a theatrical production either. All these people making a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. Do you think God sits in box seats? Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense His grace. That's what I needed. I needed to just stop doing stuff and just be with God as simply and honestly as I could, just by myself. And so I did. And what I experienced in that state of just being was massive. Because at first I had these expectations of thinking like, oh man, is God going to look at me as like a fraud? As a hypocrite? Because that's how I've been acting. But I didn't get any of those words that were coming at me. The only thing I got when I was sitting in that place was His love. The only thing that I got while sitting in that place is Him saying, hey, it's good to see you again. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I felt and I was experiencing more and more of His love. Not shame, not guilt, not what I was putting on myself. Because lo and behold, I knew that I was faking it. I knew it, and I felt it. I felt that hypocritical nature. I felt that fakeness there. I knew it. But when I got into His presence, He wasn't affirming those things. He was denying those things. He wasn't saying, Shawn, I love you because you do all those things. He said, Shawn, I've always loved you. And I always will love you. Shawn, I don't need you to do those things so that you can be good. You've always been good because I've created you. Sit with me. Be with me. Hang out with me. As a dad, I think about that now, and I'm like, that's all I want to do. My daughter, her name's Sawyer, when she walks out, I'm like, hey, Sawyer, you want to come cuddle? No, Dad. What? It's like, please? Leave me alone, Dad. And like walks down the hallway. I'm like, but the moment when she walks out down the hallway and I go, hey, sorry, you want to come cuddle? And she says, yes. I'm like, yes. Let's do this. Let's hang out together. And I feel like that's how God is, It's like sometimes we're praying, we're like, God, I just wish you would show up. And you know what I feel like him saying is, yeah, I wish you would show up too. Because where are you? We get so stuck in the past. We get so stuck in the future thinking about things that we're never actually here. And guess what? That's where God is. And in that moment of sitting there, of feeling apathy, of feeling like, I don't know what is going on, I began to sense his love again. And the crazy thing about his love is it begins to move within us. His love, as it moves within us, it propels us to want to reach out to others and love them the same. And that's what happened to me about 6 years ago, that God woke up my apathetic heart and filled me with the desire to want to spread that love towards others. And as that desire began to grow, I sensed this whisper of, Shawn, I want you to take care of my children. I'm like, okay. Only problem was I married, but I don't have any kids. So I'm like, God, are you saying that we should have kids? Are you saying we need to practice more? Because if that's what you're saying, I'm all in. Like, I will be your servant, and I will be obedient to that call. I'm like, I didn't know what he meant. Like, what do you mean take care of children? I don't have any kids. What does that look like? And so I just began to do what I normally do when it comes to not knowing as I began to research things. And so I just started researching, what are kids suffering from around the world? Maybe I could be a part of that. Maybe be a part of alleviating the suffering of children. And I discovered very quickly while I was researching that the number one killer of children 5 and under is related to drinking dirty water. That you can take AIDS, malaria, war, and combine all of them, and it's not even close to what dirty water does to kids. I read a statistic, and I was reading the statistic, and it said, imagine a jumbo jet plane filled with children 5 and under, and imagine that plane crashing every 10 hours. That's the world water crisis for kids. And I read that statistic, and I've read statistics before. I read them all the time. But something when I heard that, I was like, that's not okay. Kids are dying from diarrhea? What? That is not okay. And when I read that, God just took something and began to burst something within me. And that something was this word called hope, which is different than wishing. Wishful thinking are just thoughts, words that are spoken out into existence. Wishing creates this kind of passive optimism that can paralyze people in a happy fog of complacency where they'll say things like, well, everything will turn out fine. Why work? Why struggle? Why sacrifice or plan? The only problem is people who don't work, struggle, sacrifice, or plan, they never really get what they wish. It doesn't quite work out that way. But hope is something different. In hope, there are dreams, there are desires that inspire action. Hope is so much more than just a wish. Hope guides us in how to act now. If a girl hopes to become a doctor, she's going to study hard and go to medical school. If a guy wants to become a biologist, a marine biologist someday, he's going to go to the ocean, he's going to learn how to snorkel and scuba dive. Their hope for the future guides them in how to act now. Now, you may be thinking, well, that's easier said than done. Yeah, that's true. How can we, if we have this hope, how can we begin to act now? If we have this desire to want to make the world a better place, if we have this desire, I want to bring clean water to kids, how do we begin to act now? You see, the problem that often happens when that hope is birthed within us is that we want to see that hope realized immediately. I know that when I read that statistic, I'm like, that's it. I'm going to go get kids clean water. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it tomorrow. And it's going to happen, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. And maybe that's because I'm a millennial, or maybe that's because of my personality, or maybe that's just because of our society and everything from corporations and a consumer standpoint, everything we can get is pretty much instantly. And like literally, I could think of like whatever I want right now, and it'll be at my doorstep because of Amazon in like 2 hours. Cheez-Its. Got it. I could do this right now. I could completely ignore all of you, order Cheez-Its right now, and by the time second service is over, Cheez-Its are at my door. That's fantastic. That's awesome. That is so cool. But what it does for us at times is that now we expect things to happen quicker and quicker and quicker. And what I realized is that when it comes to the hope being birthed within us, it's a process. It's a journey, often a lifelong journey of taking one step at a time. And although that may not be the answer that we're looking for, it's actually really nice to not feel like you have to figure it all out right now. Instead, it takes the pressure off of us to be present in the moment and saying, okay, God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to sit with you. I'm going to be present with you, and I'm going to take one step at a time. I remember when I'm like, that's the only thing I'm going to do. And that's why I'm like, okay, it's just one at a time. It's just one at a time. That's what we're going to do, one at a time. What's my next thing I got to do? What's the next one thing I need to do? I'm going to do that. And someone went up to me one time, and they found out that I was doing this, and they're like, Shawn, do you even know what you're doing? And I'm like, do you? He's like, touche. I'm like, sweet, man. We're just all winging it, right? He's like, yep. I'm like, cool. I'm just going to take another step then, because I don't know what's next after that, but I know what I do need to do right now, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's how it works, is we can begin to see the hope realized over time. When God woke up my heart that one day and began to birth that within me, I didn't know at the moment that it was going to take so long and it was going to be so challenging and often discouraging, like, what in the world is going on? Do I need to keep doing this? And I felt like God saying, yes, take another step. Okay, I'll take another step. And I remember sitting in that place with my heart for these kids that are suffering. I'm like, I got to do something about it. I want to do something about it. I don't know what to do. I remember walking downstairs, I opened up the fridge, I grabbed something out of the fridge, and I shut the fridge, and on the fridge there was a magnet. Brian, the sponsored kid that my wife chose to sponsor on the plaza. And I looked at that magnet, and I'm like, that's my next step. And I sensed that whisper again. Shawn, take care of my children. Got it. I'm going to go meet Brian. Sounds good. Next step. Then between that moment and meeting Brian, there was about 4 months. Again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what his life is like. I don't even know if he's going to like me. I don't know any of that stuff. I was in the unknown again. And then I found myself in El Salvador, in this community, standing there and hanging out, looking at all the kids running around with beautiful Salvadorian people. It was awesome. It was incredible. And I'm just chilling, and all of a sudden I hear this, Shawn! 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 I'm like, who the heck is Shawn? I look to the right, and there's Brian running down a little dirty hill. He's like a dust cloud coming my way, and he's yelling, Shawn! Shawn! He's like, oh, he's saying Shawn. Oh, my name's Shawn in El Salvador? That's cool. He's saying, Shawn, Shawn. He like runs up and he grabs my leg, and I'm like, what the? And I pick him up, and he's like, bear hugs me. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Unreal. He's like walking me around his house. He's like, I see a picture of my wife and I on his wall. I'm like, how'd you get that? And there's like letters that we've written, and it says, love, Shawn and Kelsey. I'm like, I never wrote that's not my penman. My wife is a saint. She's making me look so good. She's been doing that since day one. That's why I married her. Partly, okay? And we were, walking around. I'm like, this is so cool. He's so happy. I asked his mom, like, how's he doing? How's the sponsorship? She's like, it's great. It's wonderful. We thank you so much for it. And I said, well, how's his health? And I wasn't expecting this reply because he's happy. He's excited. And she said, he's not doing good. What? What do you mean? Well, he has worms. Worms? From what? Well, from our drinking water. No way. And I felt that sense again, that whisper saying, Shawn, take care of my child. Next step, get Brian clean water. Got it. And so I went back that day and I started doing research, studying how can I get Brian clean water. And then I found this filter. And this filter is incredible. This filter will take out 100% of all the bacteria that causes kids to get sick. On top of that, it lasts over 20 plus years. What? And it costs $50? What? This is fantastic. This is like a tool from the heavens. Wow. I want to get it. The only problem was I don't want to just like buy it and give it to them. I want to partner with an organization that's already doing it, right? Why recreate the wheel when there's already ones out there? So I looked on a list of people that had these filters, and I called them all. They didn't call me back. So now I'm in an unknown place again. I'm like, well, what do I do now? And I sensed the whisper speaking, and God speaking again, saying, if it's not you, Shawn, then who? If it's not you, then who? Okay, I guess I got to do it. I'm in. I'll do it. And so I took another step, and another step, another step of planning and preparation to finally getting closer to giving Brian clean water. And then we went down there again, and we gave Brian clean water, access to clean drinking water. We gave his community access to clean drinking water. We took another step and gave the surrounding communities access to clean drinking water. And then God opened up another door in another place. And God opened up another door in another place, another door in another place. And years have passed now on this wild and crazy journey until this moment today, we have brought in over 10,000 filters affecting hundreds of thousands of people in over 15 countries. One step at a time. 6 of those countries were still doing work right now as we speak. And guess what? Brian still has clean drinking water. Guess what? He doesn't have worms anymore and hasn't had it since I met him. That's what I'm talking about. And then God decided to take a little step further and just bring clean water. And I should have noticed this, but he works in mysterious ways. And when you give a filter to someone, that is a huge act of love. And we're doing work in a couple countries right now that I cannot name it because this camera thing. No offense, dude. Appreciate you and you. But it's going to go online, and I've been told not to. So afterwards, we can talk about the places that we work in that I can't publicize, but we're in a couple places that being a Christian in that country is they're not too keen on them, for lack of better words. And I get excited about that stuff. And so I had these filters, and I knew, I'm like, you know what? I'm sitting down with one of the pastors, and he's in charge of probably the largest underground church movement in this country. And I had an idea. I said, hey, what if we did something here? What if we took all of your pastors? This was a couple years ago. What if we took all of your pastors and we called them the water engineers? And the water engineers are the ones who are going to maintain the filter. There's a maintenance process to the filter. It's back flushing it. You could see it over here in the purple hut afterwards. You back flush it. It's a piece of cake. It's super simple. But if we put a really big name to it, the government will probably be like, oh, okay, water engineer, watch out. Maybe we even make a certificate. I don't know. We'll just make it big and seem awesome and really difficult, so that what we could do with that is that say basically, okay, hey, we're going to give these filters out to all these people. These are our water engineers. They need to go into every single household and maintain their filters at least twice a month, so that you guys can go into every household, maintain their filter, but get to know your neighbor and love them and care for them without being persecuted. And he's like, that's a great idea. I said, well, great, let's try it. And the government's like, we pitched it to them. They're like, that sounds great. We're like, cool. They're like, hey, can we have a filter too? Like, of course you can, man. And so we did that, and I thought that was a great idea. I thought, that is so cool. Fast forward to the next year. We show up into their provinces, and I didn't expect this to happen, but we showed up in the provinces, and we're sitting at this table. The governing officials here, the pastor's here, I'm here, and they're talking, and they're going for it. Happy, talking, sharing. We get back in the car, and we're driving down the road, and he's got a smile ear to ear, and I'm like, why are you so happy? Well, he's like, Shawn, about 10 years ago or so, these people beat me, threw me in prison, starved me, threw feces on me for days on end for sharing the gospel. And he says, today was the first day that I was able to tell them about the love of God and how it's affected me and how he can also love you, and he received it. And I'm like, what? Hey, wait, hold that. Hold the clap. I'm not done yet. It's better. It gets even better than that. Is that every place they go now in these areas that are against Christianity, when they bring the water filter, living water shows up. See what I did there? Living water shows up, and the underground church is no longer underground. The government says, you're free to do whatever you want. What? That's crazy talk. It's a whole nother level of what God's doing as we take a little bit of his kingdom down here on earth. As we love people tangibly. It's happening even right now. Right now, as we speak, there is another country that we're in, and they're not too keen on the United States, go figure, and they're also not too keen on Christianity, and we're all at the same kind of like, well, it's emails right now, so it's a virtual table, and we're literally, I have to get it translated, so one of my translators is translating it last night, and we're talking about all partnering together to bring clean water to this country through the local church. This has never happened before. They're freaking out in the email. I could see it in Spanish. I could see like the exclamation points everywhere. I know they're losing their mind because they're like, what is happening here? This is so crazy. And it was an act of God for us even to get the filters into the country. I mean, I might be able to bring like 2 or something in my backpack, but I wanted to bring hundreds. And I remember sitting at a table and I was working and someone, my board member called me up. And he's Colombian. He lives here now, but he's from Colombia, and he has a lot of connections in Colombia, and we do a lot of work in Colombia right now. We were doing a lot of work. And he called me up in December this past year, and he's like, Shawn, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, what's up? He's like, hey, you know that country that we're going to go to in February? Oh, by the way, we had it like already, like I bought tickets, we're going. We had no idea how to get the filters there. And he's like, you know the country that we're going to in February? I'm like, yeah. He's like, the national soccer team is playing in Bogota right now, and they're staying at my friend's church. I just got off the phone with the head coach, and he said he'd be willing to take filters back into his country. I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah. I'm like, how long is he going to be there for? He's like, till Sunday. And what's today? He's like, Wednesday. I'm like, pack your bags. We're going to go tomorrow morning. And he's like, really? I'm like, well, yeah, we got to get it approved from our wives, but, you know, we'll do it. I'll buy the tickets now. There's no backing out. No, I'm kidding. I asked my wife for permission first. I've learned over the years. And so we did it. And I showed up the next day with 400 filters. And while we're on the airplane, he's like, hey, how are we going to get the filters into Colombia? And I'm like, oh, that's a good question. Do they like the United States? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no big deal. We'll figure it out. Just a couple Pringles to the customs person, and they're in. I got them right across, no big deal. And so we brought 400 filters into Bogota. We're sitting in this office room. I have my Colombian leaders are here, and it's so hard for me not to say it. The head coach of this country that we're working in, from the national soccer team, whatever, he's standing right there. And he we're all chit-chatting about whatever, and 400 filters are lined up over here, and they're in large duffel bags. And he's like, you know, I really felt God called us to go to this tournament. But our government didn't give us visas until 2 days before the tournament. He said, the problem is we only make $10, $20 a month. We don't make anything. But I really felt that we're supposed to go. So we rallied money together, and 40 of us bought tickets to fly to Colombia to play in this tournament. And he said, now the problem is we've been here for almost a week, and we haven't won a single game. We suck. And I'm like, okay. Like, every time we lose, I feel more and more in my heart like, God, why did you tell us to come here? And he's standing there, and he looks at me, and he's almost got tears in his eyes. He says, now I know why we're supposed to be here. We're supposed to bring clean water back to our country. And I'm like, no way. Look at Joshua, and Joshua's like, that's the stuff, dude. That's it right there. That's what God's doing. And I'm like, it was like one of those moments, you know, where you like sense God's presence and time, and you're like present with it, and you're like, this is so cool. I'm like, yesterday I was thinking about buying diapers at like Costco, and here I am in Bogota, and this bring clean water to the country. What in the world is happening? This is awesome. And then I spoke words out into the open air. And when I do that, it's scary sometimes. And I said a very dumb question. I said, how certain are you that you can smuggle these filters back into your country? And both the Colombians and the guy from this country started laughing, and they said, I'm pretty sure we invented the word smuggling. You got it, buddy. And sure enough, they did. They brought 400 filters in. They attached them on their bodies. They put them in their duffel bags. And they smuggled 400 filters back into their country to where the filters are right now. As we speak, they're being distributed by pastors. We are talking to the local government. We're figuring out ways to make it happen. And I have this huge hope of knowing that God will do something huge here in this country, and he will begin to birth more and more hope and healing, and ultimately his love will be made known on a whole nother level than ever before. It's crazy how awesome this stuff is when God begins to just make it happen. And you know what I realized? That what happened to me on that day some 6 years ago, when I was sitting by myself and feeling apathetic and like, I don't know what is going on, I realize now is that God has been putting me on a journey of creating a pathway for other people to participate in bringing hope and healing to others around the world. And that hope was birthed in my heart years ago. And it's only been growing more. I'd started with hope for Brian, and I still have hope for Brian. I still hang out with Brian. I took him to the zoo recently. It was awesome. I still love Brian, but I have a bigger heart more for countries now. I want to see countries filled with clean water and living water. I want to see it happen. And I know there are other people like yourself that want to be a part of it. And for whatever reason, he has chosen me to do this thing. I don't know why. I still ask him. And even my wife goes, I don't know why, but for some reason he's chosen you. I'm like, whatever. But he's just opening up this place. And my hope and my prayer is that other people can experience that kind of love that begins to move within you to want to bring hope to the people around the world. For those of you in this room who are feeling like I felt, apathetic, could care less. I'm even talking right now and you're like, don't care. If that's how you honestly feel, I get it. And I want to read you something. And maybe this would be the start of reviving your heart. Look at what Paul says to those in Ephesus. He says, I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. For those of you who feel apathetic, may you encounter the radical love of God. A love that is so incredible, our minds can't even fathom it. A love that has no exceptions, a love that is not predicated based on things that you have to do, a love that is freely given. Continually and always. May you experience that love as you sit here and are doing not that much right now. May you experience that love as he says, hey, I love you. I remember when I was sitting in that place, I felt like I'm saying, Shawn, I love you. I don't need you to be pastor. I don't need you to be world changer. I don't need you to be anything other than who I've created you to be. I need you to be Shawn. And the same goes for all of us. He's calling you out to be you. And know that who you are is dearly, dearly loved by God. And oh my goodness, the hope, the desire, the joy, the goodness as the center, the core of who we are begins to dig deep roots into that love. Oh, the wonder that can happen. as we take one step at a time in this world, as we bring a little bit of God's kingdom here on earth. And for those of you who already are like, yeah, I've got these desires. This past series has got me woke, whatever. This has woken me up to want to make a difference. I want to bring change. I want to make that happen. May you give yourself grace on the process. May you know that the small steps you take today are what it takes to see that hope realized in the future. One step at a time. One at a time. What's that next one in front of you? Take that next step and watch as God takes you on this journey of seeing hope being birthed out into the world. So let's do it. Let's go out. Let's bring hope to our children. Let's bring hope to our communities. Let's bring hope to our cities, to our country. Let's bring hope to the broken. Let's bring hope to the homeless. Let's bring hope to our neighbors, to our friends, to our workplaces. God knows they need it there, right? Let's bring a hope to people around the world. Let's bring hope to whatever God is birthing within you. And I will stand here and shamelessly say that I desire for you all to be a part of what we're doing. I would. I want you to, because I've seen it. I've looked at children in their eyes who are suffering, and I knew in that moment, I had hope knowing that today you're not going to suffer from that anymore because we're going to bring you clean water. And sure enough, boom, it happens. And they get clean water, and we get reports back, and they're no longer suffering. I've seen it, and I long for other people to be a part of that. This is not my deal. This is one at a time. This is ATTA's deal, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. But I know that not everyone wants to be a part of that. I understand that. But know that be a part of something. Make it happen. Maybe it's your own thing. That's great. Or maybe you're going to join something. That's great. Be a part of something. And remember, as you take time to sit with God, as you take time, maybe even today, I don't know what you're doing later today. Probably shouldn't drive on the freeway because we're not good at that. But whatever it is, take time to sit with God. And as you encounter His love, watch as He begins to work within you to propel you to move forward, to walk with Him one step at a time, loving those around you, both with your words and I would say even now, more importantly, with your actions. That, my friends, will truly bring hope in our world.